Weapons of mass deception of the media delusions, using double speak to keep you following like sheep. CNN and Fox News to keep the populace asleep. Don't look, don't question, as we fall into depression. The dollar's worth a nickel, but we're ruled by our possessions. I mentioned that those towers fell in less than an hour. Ignorance is bliss, the source of their power. Watch them cower in the shadows when we all wake up and see the land that we're living in is nothing close to free. It's destruction by design, prophesizing every script. Take a big step back, see the whole picture. A distraction of the mind to keep you living in a bubble.
We're in a lot of trouble. If you want the truth, go to God. Go to your guru. Go to yourself.
Thanks so much for coming. I'm Benjamin Pittman. I was actually born here in Whangarei. I grew up on our ancestral whenua at Waiōtu, and last year, just over a year ago, I decided to retire and come home after being 32 years in Sydney and a couple of years in Hawaii. I also have a bolt hole in France where I go and sort of recover from all this sort of stuff, but I came home to discover the government under our wonderful mate John Key and all of his mates had let a mining permit on our sacred mountain there at Patuharakeke for gold. Our people had already suffered greatly from the mercury mine there, which closed in 1945, so I got extremely pissed off, to say the least. And then, of course, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement came up, and I thought, well, we've got to do something. So I decided to start organising people to protest against this, because this is the biggest affront to our sovereignty, our independence ever. Yeah. So we have absolutely to oppose this. We have an election coming up. We have very few media outlets who are actually publicising. We actually got a little bit on TV3 this morning, but actually getting publicity, because most of the media, we do have some here today, but most of the media are in Key's pocket, because they're all part of the system. And, you know, I can say to them, well, screw you, we'll do our own thing, and come September the 20th, we will have our voice. It was really gratifying today to hear letters of support that arrived in my inbox from Japan. They're organising a huge rally in Japan tomorrow. We have support from Australia. I'm also an Australian citizen, but I don't really want to live there anymore because I got Tony Abbott. So between him and John Key, I don't know who's worse off. I think we all are, collectively. We had letters of support from Canada, from the UK, from friends in France. We have some friends here from France as well, and also from the US.
Vive la France!
So vive la France! Merci d'être venu. Okay, so the idea is we actually have a chant too. So I want you just quickly to learn this. And it goes like this. TPPA, go away. TPPA, not today. TPPA, secret deal. TPPA, secret steal. Remember that? How about trying to say it? TPPA, go away. TPPA, not today. TPPA, secret deal. TPPA, secret steal. Okay, so let's say it all again very loud so that all these bored people around us who don't know what's going on, don't know that their country's being stolen from them, might learn something. Okay, let's go. TPPA, go away. TPPA, not today. TPPA, secret steal. TPPA, no, secret steal. I'm going to screw it up, I wrote it. Okay, so, look, thank you all very much for coming. I'm going to hand over now to David Clendon, who's one of our Green MPs. And I have to say that the Greens have been consistent about this. And without them, I think we would be so lost. And then people in other parties, even the odd one in National, believe it or not, except they don't survive long in National, are also very concerned about the direction being taken by our country. Yeah, an interesting thing, the internet part here. It's going to be an interesting little watch. Pretty good deal for $1.29 for 3 years. I just also wanted to say that my great-great-grandfather Patuharakeke, who was the older brother of Patuharakeke, signed Te Whakaputanga in 1835, and in 1840, Te Tiriti o Waitangi. They didn't sign the Treaty of Waitangi, they signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi. That's a partnership thing, and that was done by sovereign people to sovereign people. So he and his lot don't fit the bill in any shape or form. I just wanted to say that. So here's David.
Thank you, Benjamin. And kia ora koutou. As been said, I'm David Clendon. I'm a Green MP and I live in Kirikiri in Northland here, so it's good to be here with you folk in the sunshine. And thank you sincerely for tuning out for this. It's important that we make it very obvious that New Zealanders are very unhappy about this proposal to basically sell out our economic sovereignty, because that is essentially what the TPPA is all about. Having people to turn out to these events is important, and thank you for doing that. There are other things we could be doing on a bright Saturday afternoon. The Greens have always been highly suspicious of so-called free trade agreements. I say so-called because in fact they're seldom free, and in fact they're not even necessarily about trade. Oddly enough, these free trade agreements initially were to reduce tariffs, import tariffs and the like, and there's some argument for that. But if you look around the world now, there are really no major tariff barriers to trade. Most of the barriers to trade are created barriers, and it is very much in the interests of multinational companies to see those few remaining barriers removed. Essentially, there are three things at stake here. One of them is our democracy, one is honest politics, and the third one is very much about our economic sovereignty, our right to make our own decisions that affect New Zealanders. And I'm one of those in Parliament responsible for making some of those decisions. We don't take responsibility for a lot of it being made at the moment. That'll change next year. In terms of transparency and honest politics, it is absolutely unacceptable that this significant deal is being done under a cloud of secrecy. As members of Parliament, even members of the Defence and Foreign Trade Select Committee, have no information at all about what is on the negotiating table. Organisations like the Movie Making Association of America know what's on the table. The large pharmaceutical companies know what's on the table. Politicians in other countries know what's on the table. As a Member of Parliament aspiring to represent your interests in that Parliament, I have no idea what is going on, and that is absolutely unacceptable. There is no history of these deals being done in such secrecy. And where you see secrecy, I think we need to be asking the question, what is it that they're selling out? What are they giving away that we would be unhappy about? And clearly it's going to be a great deal. We believe in transparent politics. The Greens believe in honest, open politics. Sometimes it backfires on us. If you tell people what you really think, sometimes they won't vote for you anymore. But I'd rather lose with integrity than win on a secret and by telling lies to people. That is my first choice, of course, is to win with integrity. So hold that thought on September the 20th. In terms of economic sovereignty, we know that if this TPPA deal goes through, one of the most insidious parts of it are what they call investor-state provisions. Basically what that means is that multinationals, the large international companies, would be on an even keel with governments, with elected governments. We've seen it in Australia. The Australians were considering making it tougher for the tobacco companies to peddle their poison in Australia. Things like plain packaging, things like putting cigarettes behind in a cupboard so kids can't see it. If the Australians were considering bringing some of those laws in, and they were threatened with court cases from Philip Morris, what it would allow would be for the tobacco companies to take a government to court for passing legislation intended to protect the health and well-being of citizens. And it's very likely that the tobacco company under TPPA type provisions would win that case. It's virtually creating a parallel judicial structure that gives a lot of power and control to companies and reduces the power and control of your elected representatives. And that is utterly unacceptable to me, and I suspect it's unacceptable to many of you.
There would, when it would be before a tribunal in Europe, there was no right of appeal.
We know that there are some, we're being told that there's a great enthusiasm for this deal in other countries, the other potential partners. I can tell you absolutely that that is not the case. Benjamin mentioned Australia. I met with some Australian senators and members of parliament last year. They are very, very unhappy about the possibility of a TPPA sort of a deal because they know that it's all one way. Even now, the existing free trade deals between Australia and the US is all one way. The Australian car manufacturers face a 35% tariff on their vehicles. The Americans will not buy Australian beef or sugar, for example. These so-called free trade agreements are always one way. They always preference the stronger partner, and in a TPPA deal, the stronger partner would be the private companies. It would not even be other national governments. It would be the private interests. We know that with the pharmaceuticals, our Pharmac model that endeavours to cut the cost of delivering medicines to New Zealanders would be under significant threat. That deal would probably have to be compromised, which means all of us through our health system would be paying more for our treatments, for our medicines and all of those things. We know, for example, I see our friends from GMO Free Northland, and good on you guys for the success you're having making Northland GMO Free. The deal would probably stop us from labelling foodstuffs to identify GE content in those foodstuffs. Almost certainly the manufacturers who use GE products would say, no, that will tilt the playing field. That will put us at a commercial disadvantage if they allow genuine labelling, content labelling. Do we really want to be eating stuff and we don't even know what's in it? Because that is the power that some of these companies could assert over the top of our properly elected government. And much as we might dislike the government of the day, the majority of New Zealanders did put them there, and I'd much rather have my future, the future of this country, in the hands of an elected, democratically elected body rather than the board of directors of some international companies. So that essentially is what it is at stake here. I think this is a complex message. It's not an easy thing to explain to your friends, family, people you work with, but it's important that people understand those very simple things. That TPPA potentially can override our democracy. It has been conducted in conditions of secrecy, and anywhere there's secrecy, then there's something to hide. If this was going to be the best thing since sliced bread for every New Zealander, the government would be trumpeting it from the rooftops. So be assured, they have got something to hide here. So to protect our democracy, to protect open, honest politics, and to protect our economic sovereignty, our right to make our own decisions about this beautiful country. It's our country, we love it, let's protect it, let's continue to oppose this very, very dodgy deal. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, David, thanks so much for that. I'm going to call on Alby Barr. Alby.
Thanks, Benjamin. Yes, I'm the chairman of the Northland branch of the Rail and Maritime Transport Union. And as you know, right at this moment, we have Chinese-built asbestos-laden trains. Okay, now this was a deal that was done with China under the previous Labor government. This is a sort of example of where we go wrong when we don't build our own manufacturing products at home. Those trains should have been built down in the Hutt workshop instead of being built in China. What has happened there is we have had skilled engineers headhunted from Australia, Canada, right? Canada's now just recently said we don't want any, because they have bought previously Chinese manufactured trains, they had the asbestos problem. Australia had the asbestos problem. When we went over there to sign that deal, we said we don't want any asbestos on these trains that you're building. And what happens? they have asbestos in them. Alright, so Canada has announced no, we will build our own trains, we will employ our own people, and now you have the employment agencies headhunting skilled workers. And that's a travesty for New Zealanders. The taxpayer has paid literally millions of dollars to train these skilled engineers only to be gobbled up by other countries. Okay, so just recently as last week, surveys come out, there is manufacturing in New Zealand has dropped 7% in the last 12 months. 7%, ladies and gentlemen. What this Trans-Pacific Partnership will do, that will increase tenfold. All right? There'll be countries that'll be able to tender on major builds here in New Zealand. What you need to do is you need to ring fence any contract to give a procurement policy in place so that the New Zealand manufacturer can compete with the big foreign multinationals. Okay, and it's just on to what Ben said earlier, and that is around the sovereign agreement between Maori and the British Empire. All right, what was disturbing was corporate welfare. South Canterbury Finance got paid out $1.7 billion, which is more than all treaty settlements put together. That is a disgrace. Corporate welfare, the rich got that money back. Some of them made very good money on that. And we're seeing today, mighty Genesis Energy goes on the block, right? What happened to the Mar and Par investor, right? They've been shut out on this deal. There's only 9% that's opened up. The rest is through institutions. And who has money to have a broker? It's the people with money. So it's John Key and his rich mates are going to be making the money out of this, all right? Not the Mar and Par. Never going to be the Mar and Par investors, all right? So just going back to the whole picture of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it is a shonky deal. We know it's a shonky deal. We need to keep pressure on this government and the other nations not to sign us away down the toilet. There is no real benefit for New Zealand, okay? Not when they can come into our country, forget about the environmental laws with mining, employment laws, they can skirt around that, and then they can sue our government and the taxpayer. When you take on these multinational conglomerates, okay, the cost of the legal battles escalates into the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, depending on what the deal is. And you would certainly get that from the pharmaceuticals when we talk about farming. So that's enough from me. The last thing I'd like to say is, I know many of you are supporters of the Northland Rail line. All right, this line is currently under review. Okay, there's been some good lobby groups that Save the Northland Rail group, 13,700 signatures to save this rail line. We are sick of all the trucks on the road up here. That is dangerous out there. Every week we have trucks that are crashing. On Monday by Ruakaka State Highway 1, one truck ran up the back of a logging truck straight across the road into the ditch across the road. If you were there with your family, yourself, you wouldn't stand a chance, right? Rail is for heavy transport, right? Yeah. We need, and it's clean and it's green and it's friendly. It's better for the environment, right? But we've got this national government supporting their rich mates who own those trucking firms, okay? We've got Friedlander, he's a former Transport Minister of National, he's the head of the lobby group, all right? We need those trucks off the road, just like what happens down in the Golden Triangle between Auckland and Tauranga. I had to go back to a funeral the other fortnight. Driving here to Auckland was absolute mayhem with the amount of trucks on the road. Once you got to Auckland and then to Hamilton, you saw very few trucks, but what you seen was trains that were a mile long, taking off 120 trucks off the road, one train, and they're running every 12 minutes on that route. That's what we need up here. We need investment, all right? So when the call comes, this national government wants to close this line. I hope that we can call upon many of you people to publicly rally to save a clean, green, environmentally friendly form of transport. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your time. time. Thank each and every one of you for tuning up here today. Stand with Shepherd for Whangarei, okay? And let's campaign to get rid of this national government and their cohorts. Okay, it's most essential. We all know what a third-term national government's going to do to us. All right, it's never pretty. Okay, so don't let it happen. Make sure you get out there, tell those people to vote yourself, and get out there and actually campaign hard. There's various groups out there, various political parties you can get involved in. We've got a union branch that's the affiliates. If you're a union member, get a hold of us afterwards. We'll take your details and we'll campaign strongly to remove this terrible government of power. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We're getting a really good picture of what this is all about, aren't we? And that's the most important thing. It's our country, and we're sure as hell not going to let them sell us all out to all of these foreign corporate interests. I'm going to call on Zelka, Grandma. These two and others are leading the fight for a GE Free Northland. And as David has already said, one of the effects of the TPPA will be that we won't know what's GE in the food we eat, because they want to remove all of the labelling. I've been living for a couple of years in Hawaii, and we had some massive fights there, but people didn't know what was going on. They were doing a lot of the GE and pesticide related research on Kauai where we were living, and hardly anybody knew. Once the cat got out of the bag, all hell broke loose. So, you know, all of the secrecy that we're fronting is happening around the world too. So I'm going to hand over to Marty and Zelka.
Thanks all for coming. I'm Marty Robinson from GE Free Northland, GE Free Taitokerau, and I'd like to thank everybody for their support for the cause. We've just been at the forefront of it, but there's iwi and all of us involved in it, and we feel we're making significant inroads with the GE Free issue. But it's only one spoke of this TPPA, and there's a lot more to it. We're just on one part of it, so there's a lot of other issues. There's the transnationals coming in and taking over illegally. There's the jobs being exported overseas, but I can really only talk about our issue. And as has been pointed out, this is being superseded by other things like nanotechnology and other ways of getting in to control us, and it's all about the money. We're selling out our environment. We think, ooh, we're in debt and we need the money, and they're promising us money, but it's more than that. We are selling ourselves down the river. We've got to stop it, and so that's why I'm here today. And Zelka's, I call her the eco-warrior princess because she is such a fantastic worker for the cause, and I'm going to hand over to her, but thanks for coming.
G'day everyone. I just wanted to say on behalf of GE Free Taitokerau how much we value all of your support. The work that the mana whenua, our local councils, ordinary farmers, beekeepers, ratepayers, mothers, foresters, all of you have worked really hard for 15 years to give a very strong message both to our government and to multinationals that Northland is not for sale, that we will not tolerate any GE experiments or lick on our patch, and any multinationals like Monsanto or organisations like Federated Farmers of New Zealand. I want all of you to know that in May of this year, a formidable alliance of all the district councils, various iwi, hapū, physicians and scientists for responsible genetics, GE Free Northland, Northland ratepayers and farmers will be standing together to put the finishing touches on achieving an actual enforceable regional exclusion zone for GMOs, and giving the fend to Federated Farmers of New Zealand, who have lodged a vexatious appeal, not only opposing all precautionary GE wording in our regional policy statement, but challenging and disputing that local mana whenua are concerned about this issue and disputing whether they even are allowed to have their own issues of concern or significance. This is absolutely intolerable, and
I'm now going to call on Dean Scanlan.
Thanks, Benjamin, and kia ora koutou everyone. It's great to see such a good turnout. We've had a couple of these rallies, and this is by far the best. I'm just going to read out some quotes from a couple of articles that were published in The Guardian in Britain, actually. Britain has had a lot more experience of free trade agreements than we have, and this just relates some of their experience. So the articles are actually written by George Monbiot, who's a well-known columnist there, and I'd actually encourage you to download these articles. If you Google George Monbiot, his surname is spelled M-O-N-B-I-O-T, you'll get all his articles. He lists them under categories, and these are under the category of globalisation. And the particular dates of the articles are November the 4th and December the 2nd, 2013. So quoting from the article on November the 4th, the Australian government, after massive debates in and out of Parliament, decided that cigarettes should be sold in plain packets, marked only with shocking health warnings. The decision was validated by the Australian Supreme Court, that using a trade agreement Australia struck with Hong Kong, the tobacco company Philip Morris has asked an offshore tribunal to award it a vast sum in compensation for the loss of what it calls its intellectual property. And there's a whole lot of references on these articles as well that are really worth looking at. Back to the article. During its financial crisis and in response to public anger over rocketing charges, Argentina imposed a freeze on people's energy and water bills. It was sued by the international utility companies whose vast bills had prompted the government to act. For this and other such crimes, it has been forced to pay out over $1 billion in compensation. In El Salvador, local communities managed at great cost, and 3 campaigners were murdered, to persuade the government to refuse permission for a vast gold mine which threatened to contaminate their water supplies. A victory for democracy? Not for long, perhaps. The Canadian company which sought to dig the mine is now suing El Salvador for $315 million for the loss of its anticipated future profits. In Canada, the courts revoked 2 patents owned by the US drug firm Eli Lilly on the grounds that the company had not produced enough evidence that they had the beneficial effects it claimed. Eli Lilly is now suing the Canadian government for $500 million and demanding that Canada's patent laws be changed. There's a reference here to 3 companies and hundreds of others using the investor-state dispute rules, which David Clendon referred to earlier, and those are rules embedded in trade treaties signed by the countries they're suing. The rules are enforced by panels which have none of the safeguards we expect in our own courts. The hearings are held in secret. The judges are corporate lawyers, many of whom work for corporations of the kind whose cases they hear. Citizens and communities affected by their decisions have no legal standing. There's no right of appeal on the merits of the case, yet they can overthrow the sovereignty of parliaments and the rulings of Supreme Courts. David said that these trade agreements allow governments to be on, or at least companies to be on an equal footing with governments. Reading this, I would suggest that the companies are actually getting the upper hand. Back to the article. You don't believe it? Here's what one of the judges on these tribunals says about his work. When I wake up at night and think about arbitration, it never ceases to amaze me that sovereign states have agreed to investment arbitration at all. 3 private individuals are entrusted with the power to review, without any restriction or appeal procedure, all actions of the government, all decisions of the courts, and all laws and regulations emanating from Parliament. There are no corresponding rights for citizens. We can't use these tribunals to demand better protection from corporate greed. As the Democracy Centre says, this is a privatised justice system for global corporations. Even if these suits don't succeed, they can exert a powerful chilling effect on legislation. One Canadian government official speaking about the rules introduced by the North American Free Trade Agreement remarked, "I've seen the letters from the New York and DC law firms coming up to the Canadian government on virtually every new environmental regulation and proposition in the last 5 years. They involved dry cleaning, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, patent law. Virtually all of the new initiatives were targeted and most of them never saw the light of day." George goes on to comment that democracy as a meaningful proposition is impossible under these circumstances.
I'm Tony. This is all bullshit and there's heaps and heaps of it. We can stand here for 4 hours, 4 weeks, example after example. What we need to do is tell our governments no. Do you understand that? The governments even don't have power of it.
It was absolutely true.
It's true, but there's millions of examples of it. We could be 4 weeks to one example after another after another.
People have to be
The power is with the people. We're able to say no at one time now, and that means the government will hear us say no. We've supposedly voted them in. We're supposedly given them power to make our decisions for us. We're not happy with their decisions. So we want to tell them no. And if we all say no at the same time, they'll have to listen.
People have to know what the debating issues are.
There's too many to know. Look on the website. Look on the website.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Dean.
Now guys, have you had enough of this or shall I continue? There's a couple more. Yep. I'll just finish with this one article. It says the European Commission justifies this policy by claiming that domestic courts don't offer corporations sufficient protection because they might be biased or lack independence. George asks, which courts is it talking about? Those of the US or its own member states? It doesn't say. In fact, it fails to produce a single concrete example demonstrating the need for a new extrajudicial system. It's precisely because our courts are generally not biased or lacking independence that the corporations want to bypass this. The European Commission seeks to replace open, accountable sovereign courts with a closed, corrupt system riddled with conflicts of interest and arbitrary power. I didn't even get started on the article from December the 2nd, but I think that's enough to give you a picture of what we're facing if we let this TPPA happen. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Pat.
2 minutes, folks. 2 minutes, the idea of TPPA. 2 minutes, the idea of where a successive number of our governments have been signing free trade agreements to the benefit of major investors and corporates. It's not just about the TPPA. It's about whose pockets you're in. The robber barons have been moving into the commons, have been shutting people out through the closures. The robber barons are still there now. At this stage, we have a set of the most extremely wealthy people with the most extreme level of power in this world and the highest level of collusion of the political class serving their purposes. The TPPA and foreign trade agreements like this are primarily to benefit the big investors and the big corporations. It's not the type of world we want, where indigenous peoples, grassroots peoples, people in struggle actually have to have their future dictated by corporates and by large investors. The TPPA is a tool of the big and wealthy powers. Let's continue to challenge our successive governments, including a future government from the September the 20th, to be very clear in whose pockets they stand, to not sign free trade agreements that allow investors and corporates free rein without checks. But the other thing is this is another form of colonisation. Colonisation is not just about victimising, it's about resistance. The resistance that comes from grassroots people, no matter our entry points, whether it's GE free, whether it's about mining, whether it's about community transition towns, whether about wherever we come from. Let's be not shooting at each other. Let's be working together from the grassroots. The answer to transnational globalisation and the power of transnationals and the power of the big investors lies in the soil, lies in the people who are closest to the soil, lies in our communities. The challenge is to us. Good on us for being here today. Good on Benjamin and co for organising this here in Whangarei. Good on you for taking up that event, that opportunity. But let's continue to be working together. Don't shred ourselves, but definitely don't be buying into tools like this that are for the benefit of the big corporates and the big investors. Kia ora mai tātou. The key thing here is that we are all part of this and everybody's got a role to play, and this TPPA is so insidious that those who happen to live in our city who don't know about it really should. So you are playing a very important role here because we need to share this. We've got some time before the election, we have all of this bullshit going on. The press is only interested in talking about polls that are favourable to National. They ignore every other. So there's a whole plot here that's all part of this corporate takeover. I'm now going to hand over to John Rawson from the Democrats.
We're not here to promote the party, we're here to help. But we do like people to know that we're in it, and that we have been opposing this sort of thing for 60 years and we could have used more help back then. I'm only going to make about 2 points. Sorry. Hang on. If you have a dairy farmer friend, find out whether he knows whether the agreement is going to outlaw cooperatives. Because at the moment, this country is being badly run. It's going down the drain, but it's being held up by Fonterra and nothing else. And Fonterra is not just a Cockies thing, it's the whole of New Zealand at the moment. If they outlaw cooperatives, it's gone. It'll be overseas owned within 10 years, and we'll see what happens. From the point of view of rail, I don't know what the price is of bringing a ton of logs from Oteria down to the port, or what it would be, but if you can find that out, multiply it by 2, possibly 3 million every year. There were 4 million tonnes came out of the north last year, and could have been 5 if there'd been enough contractors. So multiply that by 2 or 3 million. That is what rail is missing out on by not building the link. And the other thing, and I must say this, it was Labour that destroyed the railway workshops at Whangarei. It was Walter Nash who helped to set up the International Fund and that evil organisation, the International Monetary Fund. Just why are Labour so silent on this? Are you really going to get a change in that direction?
Thank you. My name is Joe Sharp. I think you've got to admire Putin. One thing about him, you know who the oligarchs are and you know where the money goes. We don't in Western societies, and everything is interconnected. The gentleman made a point, we're on about TPPA, that's what it came about, but everything is connected. Today, Northland's, if you like, Whangarei as well as Northland's democracy is being threatened by the Unitarian authority. Now this authority is going to reduce your capacity to have any influence in your councils. There is going to be 10 councillors, one is going to be a mayor, and that mayor will have jurisdiction virtually on 9 councillors. Those councillors are going to be 2 from each region. Well, the proportion of this democracy in regard to the number of people, if you like, the population areas, is going to be reduced. And if you've only got 10 people in power, you are open to corruption. You are open to corruption and also gridlock. So when you think of this policy that's coming internationally, just imagine what's going to happen when it filters down to here and you want to stop them using GE. They're going to change the whole policies because they're going to say, We are a different council and we have a different approach, and the government's given us a mandate. And the government only wants one voice from a council. Democracy is based on factionalism, it's based on, if you like, people's disagreement and debate. And that's what we're not seeing if we have a Unitarian council. So bear in mind, you're not talking about that issue, you're talking about another issue that's interconnected. That interconnection affects us all. So the laws will filter down. So whatever happens at these TPPA will also affect the power of your councils. So don't run away and just say, it's up there we're fighting them, you're fighting them down here. John Key wants to get this through because he's got an election. He thinks he's got a good chance of winning because he's brought it up closer to taking away from October, because he thinks he's going to win. He may win, but there's got to be enough dissatisfaction in the community to keep him on his toes. So don't give up hope, but do become conscious there may be a referendum in a short space of time. I don't think until the commission's finished their work, they'll come back, they'll say possibly if there's enough political influence, we are letting this go through and we want to find out what the community is saying, and we are going to have a referendum. They've got to have 10% of the community against them to dismiss the proposal. So bear in mind, that is coming up. It's all interconnected. I'll leave that with you.
Kia ora, Terry. I have to say, in relation to the unitary authority, I have yet to meet one person who actually supported it. So it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? This is Viv Shepherd, by the way.
Right, a couple of things, a couple of facts that haven't yet been traversed today. There's an Act of Parliament called the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. In 2002, through the work of Jim Anderton, who was the leader of the Alliance Party, who was in a coalition government with the Labour Party, it was inserted into this legislation, GE, keep it safe, keep it in the lab until it is proven safe. So far, John Key and his cronies have not altered it. So, GE in New Zealand cannot be released. That is covered by the legislative format. Secondly, I and a group of us saved the Northland to Auckland rail line. We did that, and now, because of the mismanagement of this economy by John Key and his cronies, who went out and purchased DL locomotives with asbestos in the paint, we now have no trains running on our line, which we saved. There are people in this land, in Dunedin and Hutt, from the Woburn and Hillside workshops, who are out of work because John Key and his mismanagement of this economy sold the jobs. Now, this all links in. This is nothing new. This has been going on since the 1980s, when Roger Douglas and Richard Prebble got hold of the Treasury benches. Now they are in the ACT party, and that is nothing but an act. And that is neoliberalism and libertarianism in the absolute and utter extreme, which is chaos. Now, this election, it is up to you, the people. It's not up to anybody else. It's up to you. You must vote. You must vote. Your partners, your family, your children who are 18 years old must be enrolled, and they must go to the polling booth and vote. We must have 100% turnout this year, and you must vote for the parties of the left. That is all that is left. The left
last election, 800,000 people thought it's not worth voting. My view is if you don't vote, don't come to me to bitch about what happens afterwards. You've got to vote, and as Viv says, you've got to get not only yourself but everybody you know committed to voting. That's the way we have the voice of the people, because at the moment it's being drowned out.
So let's look at what we can do.
Yeah.
Now stop.
Yeah.
One of the first things you can do is when you leave here, get in touch with everybody and stop relying on the internet. We don't live on it. Some of us do. Most people are too busy. Get out. Get to the people around you. Get out there and say it. Now the next thing that needs to be done is deal with the next closest threat, which is that one council. Now if there's anything about democracy, it is that the more people you have, the more representative people you have to look after them. We're going the wrong way. We are cutting them down to small, from a very big group to one small group. One of the things that came up was, oh, you can't get the North to agree. And I say, well done. It shows that everybody's got opinions and they've got a council to represent those opinions. If you've got one little council, it's not representing anybody, and central government can say, do, and it will do. And so you have got to get out there. You have got to get the message out that you want your separate councils, that you don't want TPPA, and tell people what that means. And think about other ways of getting the message out there. That's what we have to do. Stop fighting infighting.
Okay. All right. Does this work? Can I handle technology? Yeah? Okay. Hello. All right, guys. Look how much this crowd has shrunk. There are so many technical, as my late husband would say, high moral fiber issues here. It's complicated, and some of us have a real appetite for it. But we're not enough. We are not enough people, and we need to talk to other people we know, get them interested, get them to take action. I have one suggestion, two. First of all, if anyone says the rest of the world or the Pacific is all for this and we're standing on our own, ask them how a deeply secret agreement can be shared with all these supportive people in all those other countries when we're not allowed to know anything. The long and short of it is, they don't know any more about it than we do. And any suggestion that these other countries are supporting it lots more than us has got to be bullshit. Second point, this is very simple. When you're talking to people who don't give a damn in general about politics, who don't give a damn in general about economics, tell them this is about the emperor's new clothes. They are telling us we have a beautiful, protective new suit. And you know what? We are going to be standing naked. Naked in front of big pharma, big corporations, big-time lawyers, international ones, of course. We will be naked, and we will have been diddled big time. It's a simple message. You tell it to your children. It's the emperor's new clothes. Tell them. See if you can get them to go. And there's the petition to the councils around somewhere. What happened to that? That people were signing. Looks like I've got a treasure hunt. Look, so thank you all so much for coming. We'll keep you in the loop about what happens. But please get out, as has been suggested, vote, get everybody you know to vote so we get as close as we can to 100% turnout. Thanks a lot. You can go home now.
Thank you.